This conference will now be recorded.
So the agenda of this training is like as a performance tester, right? You will be like having post this session, right? You will be having like good experience in Splunk so that you can play with the queries. Okay, so like first, what I will discuss, right? I will explain like what is Splunk, so that like everyone will be having understanding. Okay, and post that I will move to like what will be discussed. Okay, so like what is the first I will discuss about the problem statement. Okay, so as an organization or in your performance testing environment, right, you will be having like a number of servers. Okay, so they will be present, some will be present in clustered mode, and some will be present in cloud. Okay, like that, this solution is being scattered across multiple nodes. So if you want to troubleshoot any issue, okay, in your environment or a in an organization, right, it becomes difficult for a person to log into each and every system and check the logs. Okay, there are two problems. First is like if an organization is having some 1,000 servers, okay, or an environment is having some 50 servers, okay, performance testing environment is test bed is having around like 50 servers, then it is hard to log into each and every server and troubleshoot the issue where exactly the issue is, right? So what is the Splunk? Basically, what the Splunk does is Splunk will get all the logs, okay, from your source systems or from your application servers, okay, to a centralized location, and it will store. Normally, you know, right? Only last 5 logs or last 10 logs will be present in the system. So everything will be archived. Like I can't get the last 10th log or something, right? In Log4j, you will have some archiving mechanism wherein these logs will be automatically deleted from the server. So I can't get the last week's logs or something, right? So, but what Splunk does is basically Splunk will get all those logs from your source applications and store it in a centralized location. Okay, but what actually server? Okay, and what happens in an organization, right? Each and every server will be there. Server in the sense like it may be like application server, it can be an AD server, or it can be any server, no, or uh, Apache Tomcat or VAS or whatever. Okay, each will generate some data in terms of like the application logs, or it can be a CPU, or it can be a memory. Okay, there will be some router. Okay, router will have its own metric, right? In the same way, the, each server will generate some data. The Splunk has intelligence or capability to get the data from everything. Basically, Splunk monitors everything. Like it can get data from routers, switches, IoT devices, and everything. Okay. So normally, how the log looks, right? Okay. So basically, the log looks like this. So it is a one snippet of the log. Okay. Where if you closely look into it, no, there I am performing something like a add to cart operation. Basically, this is a snippet of the retail application. Okay, here I am performing some add to cart operation, and item what I am purchasing is something like this one, est hyphen 6, and the product is mb, something like this. So with this, and here I am having something like this is the status code, and this may be the response time. Okay, so if from one snippet only I'm getting this much informations, right? So if I am having a bulk data, right, I can derive some metrics out of it, or I can get the stats out of it. As a business guy, let's assume like I'm a business analyst. Okay, I want to get how many items are purchased, okay, how many items are added to cart, how many items are like placed order. So if I have a centralized location of these logs, from the logs I can parse this data. Okay, as a performance testing guy, you may be interested in how many requests are successful, what is the response time of each and individual HTTP request? What is the average response time? So these can be derived from the raw data. Till now, any doubts? Hope no. So Splunk
Yeah,
is a,
no doubt.
so basically
Yeah,
what is Splunk? So Splunk is a proprietary software that is developed by the Splunk organization, and what it does is basically it will collect, search, and analyze the and visualize. Okay, so let's assume like here I'm having one server. Okay, and the logs are being generated in it. Okay, and I am having the Splunk over here. What Splunk does is basically it will get the logs from your application servers. Okay, from your application servers. Okay, basically it will get all the logs on the fly to your Splunk. Once I get the data, right, what it can do, right, based on your criteria. Okay, now I want the response time of, okay, add to cart operation. Okay, so let's assume like if you are using like any AppD or something, I don't think we have a specific metric to filter out the transaction. So normally we will be using APM devices also, right? APMs monitoring tools also like Dynatrace, AppDynamics, and all those. So in Splunk, right, it you can perform some granular search. So let's assume like there are around like 10 components. Okay, like there will be something like north pole component and south pole component, right? So first the call will start at, let's assume, like AWS, and from there it will go to Azure cloud, let's assume. Okay, and from there it is coming to on premises. From on premises is going to some cloud solo, like one more component which is deployed in the Google cloud, and then it has to come to some multiple app servers in the on premises. In such complex scenario, right, uh, it will be difficult to track each and every transaction. Like now we have multiple microservices also built, so each microservice will give some data, right? Each will give some log. So basically what we will do, right, we'll collect everything, and we can, like as I mentioned, like add to cart, I can get the metrics for add to cart. Or if it is a purchase transaction, I can get the metrics like how many transactions passed, what is the response time for that particular alone transaction alone. I can filter that. Okay, so that's what it will be able to help you to search based on some criteria. And once, let's assume like I have added some add to cart, after that I can analyze the data. Means like how many for add to cart feature. Okay, how many 200s are there, how many 400s are there, what is the response time? So those things can be monitored, can be analyzed, and I can prepare some graphs. I can prepare some dashboards to visualize the data. Okay. So as I mentioned, the Splunk monitors everything. Basically, right, it can get the data from servers, Active Directory, and Windows machines, radio frequency devices, sensors, virtual machines, app servers, and like security devices, databases, web servers, networks, exchange servers, mainframe data. So basically, Splunk can capture everything. So if you are having some end-to-end solution, like let's assume like you want to monitor some Airtel. Okay, we want to monitor the network of Airtel, including the network elements. Okay, and you want to monitor the servers. okay, and you want to monitor the servers. So the Splunk has that universal solution. It can monitor from your radio frequency devices from the towers to the application servers. So if they want to collect the data, right, they can collect and represent in a visual fashion in a dashboard. Basically, like Splunk can monitor anything, not only your application servers, the other stuff as well. Okay, like these uses and all those will, yeah. So this one we'll discuss detailed in our future classes. So there are some competitors for Splunk as well, like LogDNA, Elasticsearch, like Sumo Logic and SolarWinds, Logi, right? There are like multiple competitors for Splunk, but Splunk is having like a major share. Okay, 80 to 90% Splunk is out of Fortune 500 companies, right? If you see, like 450 or like 470 will use Splunk. Okay, so I will open the Splunk website and I will show. Okay, so the Splunk has multiple products. If you go to like product section, no, okay. So they have been categorized into three things. Like one is platform security and observability. Okay, so in platform, right, you will be having something like it can monitor the infrastructure, the logs and everything. Like normally, right, in our offices, we will be having the Splunk Enterprise, and we will be having something like Splunk Cloud Platform. Okay, and Splunk is widely used in security also. So in the Splunk security, right, you will be having like SIEM tool. You might have heard about the SIEM tool. This is the, like, it will monitor your network. Let's assume one example of this would be, let's assume like you have opened one port, okay, in your network. Let's assume like you have opened one port and which is vulnerable. Okay, a hacker can come into that port. Whenever the port gets open, right, the traffic will get flown through it, right? So the Splunk has capability to detect that one, and it will automatically send an incident to the respective team. Okay, Splunk is used majorly used in the security and observability. Now Splunk is having the APM capability also. These days, right, they have come up with some products like AppDynamics and all those. So they have introduced something like Splunk infrastructure monitoring, Splunk application performance monitoring. Okay, so the Splunk can be used as a APM tool, not only for logs. If you have the licenses, right, then you can use the Splunk for the APM as well. So that there will be one-stop solution to monitor the app metrics as well as the logs in the same tool. So we'll be discussing about like what is machine data in our classes, right? We'll be discussing about like what is machine data, why Splunk is needed, okay, and the scope of the Splunk, okay, and like as I mentioned, no, there are two use cases. Like one is like you can monitor the logs, okay, and you can monitor your APM as well. But in our course, right, only the logs thing will be covered because the APM is a specific tool. Okay, and we'll be discussing about like Splunk products and the versions that are being used, and I will be explaining about the architecture diagram. Splunk is not only a single software. Basically, Splunk is a this is the architecture. Like Splunk has multiple components. So you will be having some components like universal forwarder, heavy forwarder, indexer, cluster manager, search head, deployment server, and license master. So this universal forwarder, what it will do, right? Like in your application server, you will install the agent basically. So this universal forwarder is a agent which will be installed in your app server or your Windows machines or in Linux machines. So what happens, right? This universal forwarder will facilitate the shipping of the logs to the indexer. Indexer is nothing but the Splunk. Okay, so indexer is a place where the logs get stored. Got it? So this is the agent basically. Okay, this agent will send the logs to the Splunk. If you go to the architectural diagram, right, I don't want to take it on the, like, it has multiple. If you want some one cluster deployment, right, there will be some 6 or 7 nodes only for the minimal setup in an organization. So it can scale horizontally also, because this Splunk has capability to, like, get the logs from thousands of servers, no? So it also will be scaled horizontally based on your need. Okay, these things we will discuss, and we'll be discussing about like Splunk licensing, like how the Splunk charges. Okay, let's assume like Splunk will charge for basically for GB. Per GB, the Splunk will charge. If you procure 1 GB per day, then you will be having some license. If you procure some 110 GB or 5 GB, the license cost would be different, and it is not based on your number of servers. I can have like 10 servers or 100 servers. That doesn't matter. How much data I am ingesting or I am loading into the Splunk matters. Okay, so here Splunk licensing works on the, like, how much data we ingest. Okay, so we'll be discussing about the various Splunk users and roles, and we'll be discussing like prerequisites of installing Splunk and installation of Splunk in Windows and Linux. Okay, and we'll be discussing about the, like, Splunk UI part. So I think I have this one. So this is the Splunk UI. So here, right, this is the place where in the search panel, right, you will be writing your queries. Okay, you have multiple sections, like, so you'll be having something like drop down. Okay, okay, so, and we'll be having something like the dashboards. Okay, in dashboards, right, we can create the dashboards basically. Okay, so one or two samples. One second, I had one dashboard. Okay, leave it. I will show the dashboards. This is a sample dashboard. Just if I select something, right, you can create the chart something like this. We'll be discussing about this one in future classes. So we will be explaining about the Splunk UI. Okay, and we'll be explaining like what is field. So how the Splunk captures the data. Okay, and we'll be discussing about the fields and how the Splunk ingests the data. Okay, so like if I'm sending some data into the Splunk, right, that doesn't mean like it will parse everything. Okay, so it will parse based on the key value pair. Okay, if there is something like key value pair, right, then only Splunk will create a field, and using that field only we can get the data. Okay, and we will be like playing with some SPL. Okay, SPL is the language used to write the Splunk queries. Like there will be multiple. We'll discuss about like so many Splunk queries, like table sort. Like let's assume like if you want to get the status codes, okay, of that particular, you have run one test and you want to capture the status codes, whatever that are occurred. Okay, so we can write some queries to display only the status codes for that particular run and the counts. Let's assume like if you want to prepare a chart with status codes, okay, and as well as the count, like how many 200s, how many 400s. Like that we can prepare the, like if you prepare the charts, like if you want to sort after getting the data, right? If you want to sort, and if you want to rename the fields, okay, and if you want to, there are some other like other queries, like I want to get the top three errors, okay, and the count. So I want to know like passed transactions only, failed transactions count only, okay. So those things can be like those can be retrieved by using the Splunk queries. So like let's assume like whenever let's assume like I will write one query, okay. So there is something like index is equal to app. Index is a place where the Splunk will store the data, okay. So I'm getting all the data here. So let's assume like here there is one field called as status, okay. So I want to know only status. So I can write now. If I go to here, now I got right 200, 400. This is the status codes and their count. So if I want to sort, okay, with this fashion or in this fashion, I can sort it. So I have to play with the data. Now if I am presenting in a dashboard, if I want to like put this in increasing order or decreasing order, now I can do. Or I want to know only the top three errors, okay, then I will be like telling you the commands like how to get that in a dashboard, okay. So let's assume like here, if I go to my events page, right, here there is something like action. In action, no, there is one field called as action. In action I will be having something like add to cart, purchase, view, remove, and change quantity, okay. These are like multiple options that are being supported in uh, the in that e-commerce site, okay. Now I want to get now you see, right, for 200 I'm getting, for 200, okay, if there is a 200 response code, okay, out of which how many are for add to cart, how many are for change quantity, how many are for purchase, okay. Like that I can tell, like if it is a 503, how many features it is affecting, okay. If there is a 500, it is applicable for only these. If there is a 406, right, then it is applicable for not all, but it is impacting only 3 or 4. I'll put it in this way. So something like this. Now it will be better. For 200, what are the error codes? Okay, for 400, what are the features it is impacting? If it is a 503, I am able to get something like this. No, I'm seeing this 503 in this add to cart or change quantity or purchase. Like that, you can write queries and you can get the data. So this can't be achieved by using the APM tool. No, it will be very tough to retrieve this data using the APM tool. But with Splunk now I can find granular level. So if I want to retrieve the data only with add to cart, no, I can get the data for add to cart alone. Like that you can get the data. So we will be playing with those SPL commands, and we will be Splunk is having something like alerts. Alerts is something like let's assume like in production or when there is a performance testing running, suddenly there are like a number of errors, so automatically you will get some mail. So Splunk has that mail capability also. Based on a query, like let's assume like if a transaction is breaching some count or something, right, it will automatically send the mail to the respective teams or persons. Okay, field extraction. Field extraction is something like Splunk won't recognize everything, no? So there will be like basically Splunk will monitor everything. So means it can get the data. So if I want to parse it, right, here, if you see, there is something like action where we got some data. Action means there are 4 or 5 options. Let's assume in the last you are having something like 200 as HTTP response code, and this is the response time. Basically, if you go to a field called status, okay, you are getting the values, but for response time, it is not creating the field. In such cases, what we have to do, we have to create a field for this one, and you have to get the data and play with the data. Okay, so how to do that? Whenever the Splunk is not automatically detecting the fields, right? How to handle that? Okay, those things will be like discussed. Okay, and there is something like transaction. Okay, now what happens, right? We are having some all decoupled machines, right? If I want to make a payment, for make a payment, there will be different microservice. For add to cart, there will be different microservice. And if you want to like purchase, there will be a different microservice. Okay, so now it is a difficult for me to track the end to end user journey, because each microservice will, if the component is different, right, it will log, those logs will be logged in a different server, right? So in such things, what we can do, right, you based on the user session ID or something, based on the tracing ID, you can you can track the end-to-end user journey. Okay, there will be something like TID, or there may be something like J session ID or something. There will be one thing unique. Or sometimes what you will do while running the performance test, right, you will be adding the header, right? In header you will be having, you add some UUID. Okay, and that UUID will be like going through all the components, right? Based on that UUID, we can track the end-to-end user journey irrespective of whether it travels to multiple components. Okay, so we'll be discussing about the lookups. Okay, and we'll be discussing about the tags, data models. Basically, lookup is something like, there is one use case where I'm doing a purchase. Okay, let's assume here I'm doing a purchase. Here I will be having only some specific information. I will be having about the product ID. Okay, I'm having only the product ID. But my manager asked me, okay, I want to know what are the products or iPhones that has been sold and their vendors and their states. So in a country, okay, how is the product sale across multiple states or across multiple cities? So, but here now I'm having only the product ID. Okay, okay. Based on this, okay. Now, if I have some other, if I have something like, if this is the uh, this is for which one? The log is for, okay, screens, butter games category, screen category ID. Okay, leave it, like let's assume like if there is an order placed. Okay, in that you will be having the customer name as well as the address, right, which it has been shipped to. Based on that, right, then what we can do, right, every product will have some ID, unique ID. Based on that one, they can track the seller also. They can prepare the stats of the seller as well as the like count of products that has been sold in particular area or state or something like that. We can derive the data. Got it? Or let's assume one more use case. Let's assume you are doing some payment through credit card.